I'm sorry, can you read yourself?
Coordinator is Keisha, K-E-I-S-H-A, and then the counterpart, who's working at Jason Moore, is Amy Juliana. And she is our alternate instructional education coordinator. Is that right? Alternate instructional, or alternate instructional support. And she is overseeing all of the recovery and
I just said no, I'm not. Not at all. I tried to say spa 3 times and it was changing it to spell.
We just. We really don't. Oh, here they come.
How you doing? Jose loves too. How's it going?
Oh, hey Jeff, you're right here by me. Apologies in advance.
Mind the lights here?
Not starting yet. I have to use the picture. That's not on camera, correct?
It's all throwing me off.
I said it's gonna be just a couple. We've officially met. I'm Jen Ham.
Oh, hi, Jessica.
Nice to meet you.
Talk on the phone in this?
Yeah. I don't complain. I've been smoldering in various parts of the building.
Barbershop.
Not so hard.
Oh, okay. It's a food experience, if you want food experiences. Yeah.
50 minutes of that, and then I went
Part
with
time.
my daughter, this is big garbage out on the curb, you've probably seen it.
Probably not.
It's twice a
Southern
year they do
Planning.
that, and they do, you know, the whole house out there. And then couches and all sorts of stuff. And so she was trying to clean up, so I went over and did that for 2 hours.
To live the urban life, huh?
Died. It's an old house.
It's hot right now with the.
I came home, I was just too,
Which is a good movie, by the way.
I was too tired to take a shower. But I did.
Mondays are rough anyways. It's like they're very long days on board meeting days and.
I did get it for a while. So bad.
That must be, that's a posh place.
Funny, I did the rowing machine.
That looks very posh.
My husband tried to today for like 5 minutes. Oh, I heard so much here. No big deal. But I've been doing it for a while, so.
And you have 2 days.
Yeah.
I think that makes us stronger. Able to handle it.
Yeah, that looks awful fancy. Typically, if you're getting street food.
I'm ready for
Man,
fall.
it doesn't look
I
that
am
bad.
too, ready. This,
That looks yummy.
your bins too. Really do anything.
Allison, we pull up, do you have the budget on the?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Aw.
So is. Thanks. What is this for?
I was from the meeting last week.
What do they do?
You've been a board member.
Every street, in every town. Because everybody eats out, and it's not really
Top secret spy.
just that.
So, quick question. I found my folder.
I did. I didn't know if you wanted it back. I didn't open it. In John's office.
Come on.
Yeah.
That's mostly just for the tourists.
That's beneficial.
He thought it was Tiffany's, and I was like, I opened it, and it was your hand, you know, I was like, oh, this is John's. Yeah.
Oh, here it is.
We got the this Monday, right?
Oops, yes. Should I wait for Margaret? It's okay. So it's a little more.
Everywhere. Yeah, every little town
I
has
thought
that.
maybe that's maybe.
No.
Gosh, I got it.
Oh, these things are, okay, so I didn't see these things are great attachments.
Happy Monday.
Here. Aren't you so happy?
We don't need to go over.
You're still gonna come to meetings, aren't
Who's leaving?
you? Corey and I.
We'll Look at his face, it's extreme pain right now. He's trying to smile through it.
I know, I'm just ignorant. You knew all that already.
Ignorant dog.
Make sure that I.
I'm good. I figured out. I restarted myself.
I know.
I know he's got that. Yeah, that'd be great. I would like that.
Did you see the video that applies to
Yeah, I have a price
Go ahead and grab it. There's a question Maury had, that he wants me to.
I was wondering what the status of this was.
Yeah, but we
We're
got,
not doing that. I'm just showing them what our first bid was.
because this wasn't even the whole first.
We didn't do the work. It's not
Well,
been
one
worked.
side is steel, one side is silas, is 70,000.
Oh, I'm sorry, Don.
Oh, I didn't get down to 70 yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I will give whatever.
Look forward to it.
Okay. So we are technically already in open session, as we just came out of closed session. But we are going to move into the budget hearing for Galesburg Community Unit District 205 and Galesburg Area Vocational Center for July 1, 2018 through June 30, 2019. Allison? Can you do roll call?
I'm sorry. Glasowicz.
Yes.
Lyon.
Yes.
Pickrell.
Here.
Sharpie. Statham.
Here.
Banks.
Here.
Cervantes.
Here. Okay, so we'll have the presentation of certificates. Ms. Haney.
I'm going to do a brief budget presentation before we move into the regular session. This is the FY19 budget. We're first going to be looking at Galesburg Community District 205 and then Galesburg Area Vocational Center. Before I move to the first slide, I want to say that this is the first budget presentation in 4 years that I've been able to present at District 205 that has kind of a nice little glimmer of hope in terms of the state actually ceasing proration, the state paying all of their bills in a relatively timely manner, and some incremental increases in evidence-based funding models. So you're going to see that when the state actually pays its bills on time and gives us what they promise us, that we're able to kind of get back on track in terms of our finances and fund balances. So I know this is a little small. There's a lot of information on here. The board members have a copy of this, and this will also be online if anyone's interested after this board meeting. But the red columns represent the FY19 revenue, expense, and then either surplus or deficit in that particular fund balance. I'm going to go through each of the funds. In the Education Fund 10, we're looking at $38.7 million in revenue, with expenses at $37.3 million, which will leave us a $1.3 million surplus in the Ed Fund, and we're going to talk about how this is going to relate to the board's goals here in a moment. In Operations and Maintenance in Fund 20, we're going to have $2.2 million in revenue this year with $2.2 million in expenses. We have a slight deficit of $14,000. We're hoping to bring that to zero by the end of the year through some efficiencies. Debt service revenues are at $4.2 million and our expenses are $4.1 million with $103,000 surplus in that account. Transportation Fund 40 has $2.2 million in revenue, and we're right a little over $2 million in expenses. So we have a small surplus of $184,655 in transportation. That is cautious. I don't know if certain board members remember a couple of years ago where we had to purchase a minivan, I believe it was in March or April, towards the end of the year to transport some special education students that were attending a special program in the Quad Cities. And that few months of transportation cost us $30,000 just for that small bit of time. So unfortunately, $185,000 in transportation can go quickly, but it's definitely a positive trend. IMRF, we have $795,000 in revenues, $1.4 million in expenses, and you'll see that we have a $652,000 deficit in that account. That is a strategic spend out. So we have reserves in that account that we've purposely under levied IMRF so that we could spend those fund balances down, because we can't transfer that, we can't do anything else with that money. So that's why we're spending that down incrementally over time. Our capital projects, that's where any additional revenues that we receive from the 1 cent sales tax go into our capital projects fund. We're projecting that revenue at $626,000. We have an expense projected at $750,000. That's really a placeholder in case we were to have some sort of an emergency. We need to replace something that was unexpected that might not be in our health, life, safety survey. But we don't have any specific projects planned for that, other than some landscaping projects that actually we're going to talk about later that would come out of Fund 60 for that. And so it shows a $125,000 deficit. We have reserves in there, but once again, that's kind of a placeholder, a worst case scenario, so we will not be deficit in that account most likely. Working cash, we have revenues of $223,000 for this year. We're not anticipating making any transfers. So that will all remain in working cash. Tort, we have revenues right at $2 million and $1.9 million in expenses with $147,000 cushion there in case anything were to come up in tort liability. And finally, in fire prevention and safety, we refer to that as health, life, safety. We have revenues of $461,000. We're anticipating expenses of $150,000. That may be a bit confusing as we're talking about the millions and millions and millions of dollars of health, life, safety work that we're going to be talking about in a little bit. But these are just the absolute bare minimum things that we need to do in health, life, safety. It doesn't have to do with the 10-year study items. So at the end of the day, we're going to see about $51.6 million in revenue. $50.1 million in expenses, which should leave us throughout all of our funds with a $1.5 million surplus. With that being said, last year the board revised its board policy 4:10, fiscal and business management, and there were two key goals that the board sought to really focus on in the upcoming years. So the first one is number 6 under the goals and objectives, which is to have 180 days of cash on hand in our operations accounts. And then number 7, which is operate with revenue to fund balance of a ratio of 2 to 1. With the first goal, which is operate with 180 days cash on hand, and we're just looking at the operating funds here, we see that with having a projected ending fund balance of $14 million on 6/30 of 2019, that in order to have 180 days cash on hand with this year's budget numbers, we're 76% towards our goal. So if, unfortunately, some of you that have been here for 4 years remember where we were at in 2015, 2016, where we weren't sure, given the unpredictable revenues from the state, whether we were going to be able to make payroll for 3 months with what we had in reserve. So this is definitely a very positive trend to getting towards that $18 million 180 days cash on hand goal that is in the board policy. Operations and maintenance, we have a projected fund balance of $2.3 million at the end of this fiscal year, and 180 days of cash on hand is really $1.1 million. So we've met that goal, and I'm going to talk here in a moment just about how that can help us with potentially what Leggett's going to be talking to us about tonight. And same way with transportation. We are looking at a projected fund balance of $3.1 million at the end of the fiscal year, and 180 days of cash on hand with transportation is about $996,000. So we've met that goal as well. What this will allow us to do is, without raising the tax rate for our taxpayers, it'll allow us to basically shuffle some of the tax levy to be able to fund health, life, safety, and to be able to fund some of our capital projects without raising the tax rate. So we'll be able to reduce those percentages in the levy in November when I present that, and you vote on it in December, without raising the overall rate, to hopefully do some of the work that Leggett and Associates will be talking to you about tonight. And then the second goal is to operate with revenues to fund balance ratio of 2 to 1. So in the education fund, we're looking at FY18 revenues of $38.7 million. The projected fund balance is $14 million at the end of the fiscal year, and having that fund balance goal of 2 to 1 would look something in the neighborhood of $19.3 million of what we would need in reserves. And so we're at 73% of the goal for that. For operations and maintenance, the FY18 revenue is $2.2 million. The projected fund balance is 2.3, and so the ending fund balance with that 2 to 1 ratio is 1.1 million. So we've met that goal as well. And same in transportation. You see the 2.2. We're projected to have a fund balance of 3.1, and then our ending, the 2 to 1 ratio goal is 1.1 million, and we've met that. So a couple things that everyone needs to keep in mind as well. Our expenditures will increase next year. A part of our collective bargaining agreement is a 3% increase for all employees covered under the collective bargaining agreement. We will also be bargaining food service contracts next year, as well as maintenance and custodial services. So we'll have some increases along that. So that will change, our goals a little bit in terms of revenues and expenditures, but we're definitely on a positive path. The next we have a Galesburg Area Vocational Center budget. What's important to know, this looks really different than the district budget because basically it's a budget that revenue is received from the Perkins grant, and so whatever we receive is money in, money out. So our salaries for FY19 are $264,000. That is 5.6 FTEs, full-time equivalents, so that's the salaries that are covered in there. Employee benefits are $38,000, purchase services are $49,000, supplies and materials $105,000, capital outlay $1,100, other objects $41,000, for a total expenditure of $500,401. You will see as compared to last year that the Perkins grant dropped about $50,000. So unfortunately, that means that to offer those same programs, that the district is picking up more of the cost of those programs than it was in the previous year. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Thank you.
Let's walk
Bad
up.
news.
I know, I haven't got to
It's been the past.
deliver
Yep.
positive
Very
budget
excited to sit
news
here today.
since I've been here, so this is a nice change of pace.
Okay, so presentation of certificates. Do you have to vote on that?
You do that in regular meeting. You can only have the hearing here, and if anybody in the audience actually has questions too, this is the time for them to ask them.
Any questions from the gallery? This is one of those opportunities where we actually look at you and say, do you have anything that you'd like us to hear
About the budget.
about this budget? Thanks for that. Because I'm sure there's a lot of things you'd like for us to hear. No? Okay, great. Then, do I have a motion to close this portion of our meeting?
Sure. I so move.
I'll second.
Glasnovich,
Yes.
Lyon,
Yes.
Pickrell,
Aye.
Sharpie,
Aye.
Statham,
Aye.
Banks, Cervantes.
Aye. Okay, so now we're gonna call to order the regular meeting for District 205. All the openings and closings. Okay, Allison?
Lyon,
Yes.
Pickrell,
Here.
Sharpie,
Aye.
Statham,
Aye.
Banks, Cervantes,
Aye.
Glasnovich.
Yes.
Okay. So if we'll all rise for a moment of silence and a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now is the time of the meeting where we have recognition of visitors. Allison, do we have anything?
No.
Okay. So then we'll move right into our presentations to the board. Do we have a student council rep tonight? No?
There's a young lady here.
She appreciates it. Okay, so next we will have Mr. Spring and Dr. Asplin talk to us about the Ingenuity program.
I'll have Mr. Spring take that over, just to give you a little preview. This is, I asked Mr. Spring to give his presentation tonight, as this is the new online learning platform that we have here at the school. And Mr. Spring did a lot of work last spring to investigate some alternatives, and he looked at several options. And this new platform came after a lot of homework on his part, so I thank him for all the efforts he's done. Turn it over to Jason.
Okay, thanks. So, as Dr. Asplin said, we looked last spring, the different options that we have with some online learning. Give you a little history for this is our 10th year of operation at North, and for the last 9 years, we were using Apex Learning. And I can tell you, one reason why we were using Apex is because it was affordable. I remember 8 years ago when I took over as principal, Wes Olson, who was the outgoing principal, and I met with one of the salesmen for a different company. He took us to lunch in the summer at Sully's, and we were looking and told him how many kids we need to service, and so we gave him our number, and then he did some calculations, and he passed us his number, and it was just shy of $200,000 is what his company was going to be for the online services, and we were already only paying for Apex $18,500, so we thanked him for the lunch and sent him on his way. And even this summer, talking to some different companies, we met with one, we did it with Mrs. Springer and Mrs. Ham, Mr. Bradford. I think their number was 120,000. I mean, something that was just not even in the ballpark, So, but then we kind of landed on Edgenuity, and I'm not going to badmouth Apex, because Apex has served us well. We use Apex at North, we use it at the high school for credit recovery, we also used it during summer school, and we service even some junior high kids with it. So, but after 9 years, it was time to kind of look and see what else was out there. So what I'm going to do real quick is I have a little 2-minute video I want to show you about Edgenuity, and then I'll talk for a couple more minutes, and it'll be good. Let's see if I can get this.
Welcome to Edgenuity, where learning clicks. As an innovative blended learning provider, we understand that rigorous, engaging content is critical to student success. It's what matters most to those who use our program. That's why we put so much effort into the planning and development of our instruction. We want you to be comfortable with our courses, knowing that each one is a complete online learning experience and not just an on-screen textbook. So, how are we different? First, our direct instruction videos feature expert on-screen teachers who use a variety of graphics, animations, and prompts to bring lessons to life, explain concepts, model strategies, and provide examples. And we engage students with effective multimedia instruction, including interactive activities that are strategically embedded throughout courses, as well as meaningful real-world connections and graphics and animations that bring complex content to life. In each course, students read, write, explore, create, practice, predict, and much more. With our virtual labs, students learn to think like scientists, using laboratory and other scientific tools to conduct experiments, make and test hypotheses, and analyze results. We ensure learning is accessible to all learners by including a full suite of innovative tools, including the Close Reader, which supports the active reading of complex texts with the option to translate and have it read aloud. Finally, with our course customization tools, courses can be personalized to meet the needs of a district, school, group, or even an individual student. Our award-winning online courses raise the bar on keeping students engaged and helping them achieve. And the research we've done with our partner districts shows that Edgenuity can help increase graduation rates and raise test scores. And teachers know it's effective because they see real-time student data on progress and achievement. That's the Edgenuity difference. Edgenuity, where learning clicks.
So, when we were looking for different providers, one thing we were definitely looking for something that was rigorous and engaging. And, with Apex over the last 9 years, they hadn't really changed their format much. And one of the things that we fought with our kids, not all of our kids, but a majority of them, was with Apex, you could just jump right to the quizzes. You didn't really have to go through the material. So we've always fought that. Despite our best efforts, we tried to, show the kids how to, maneuver through it, but they always want to jump to the quiz. And that way they could get to the test and just get through it. And it bothered me that they were just trying to get through it. And with Edgenuity, we love their format because you have to go step by step. They have these wonderful interactive videos where a teacher is actually on the screen and it's interactive. They're highlighting things and underlining things. And there's a little drop-down box where the kids can take notes, and they can actually use the notes that they recorded, when they take their quiz. So a couple other things that I want to show you is the dashboard. So, and I apologize that the screen, I really worked hard to try to make this big, but it looks big on my screen, and I always forget when I get here. I did this in July when I did my presentation. But what this is a teacher dashboard. So when the teachers open up Edgenuity, they can see their students, what course they're taking, what their grade is, when they started their class, and they can tell if they're on target or not. So the kids in red, if you look on the right, those boxes, those kids there are not on target from when they started to their targeted completion date. The other kids in white, I'll highlight the girl at the top there. When she started the course on 8/23, she should be 42.9% of the way done with her class, and she's actually 55% of the way done. So she's ahead of the game. The girl below her, this is already her second class. She's a young lady who's trying to graduate midterm. She's a mom and just needs to get going. A real smart young lady. She should be at 17.2%. She's actually at 83%. She works all day. She works all night. She works on the weekends. Has to take tests with us. Those are proctored, but as far as the assignments and quizzes, she can do on her own. The boxes on the left, the exclamation marks, the orange means that's something that the teacher needs to review. The red is those kids need help. They're way behind. They're not passing. We need to intervene with them a little bit. And then the yellow is something that the teacher needs to score. So those, when the teacher opens his dashboard, they can see this here. So it's a nice little screenshot of where the kids are at. The next thing I'm going to show you is the student progress. This is the young lady that's already finished one class.
Excuse me, Jason, can I ask the question?
Go ahead, yep, go ahead.
What is target completion date? How's that
Okay.
decided upon?
Sure. So the end of our term is October 19th. So we would want the kids to at least have one, this class done by then. Okay, so that's the target there. So they kind of calculate, how many assignments, how many quizzes and tests and exams are in there, and then they can figure out. Then when the kids open up their dashboard, they can see exactly where they're at. If it's a blue line, that means they're, I'll show you here on this right here. If it's a blue line, they're on track. If it's a green line, they're ahead. So this young lady is already at 83% of the class, where she's only supposed to be at 17%, but she's working extra at night on the weekends. She's just working nonstop on this because she really has a desire to be done at midterm. And her actual grade is 91.9%. There are 15 quizzes in this class that she's taken. She's already passed 13 of those with a score of 92%. There's 3 tests, and she's already completed 1. And then there's actually 84 assignments, and she's completed 73. Now it says on here that only 44 are graded. Some of the assignments aren't graded, like some of the vocabulary words and things, just assignments that you would do. If a teacher, when you're in math class and you have assignments, some of those, working through those problems are not all graded, but, in this case, 44 of those were graded. So she's doing really well. We have some kids who are in the red but we have that with Apex as well. We got to keep after those guys. So lastly, what I've done for the board is I've created you can be a student. So I'm going to log out of this real fast and go into, if it's still down here, it is. So this is the Edgenuity homepage for the board. You can't all log on at once, but in your free time, when you don't have anything else to do, you can log in as a student. Your username is board205, and your password is 1234. And I'll show you kind of what it looks like. I'm just going to show you just for a second. So this is the class I signed you up for is civics, because many of our kids are taking civics or have failed civics and need to repeat civics. You click on that, you go to next activity, and this is kind of what it looks like for the kids.
Now let's begin by looking at why the government of the
So you can
U.S.
see it's a video, interactive, it underlines things. Over here is the drop down where you can take notes on the side. You can use those notes on your quiz. So kids can't skip forward, they have to go through each one of these boxes down here. I can't click ahead, I have to wait till the video's over, and then I click on the next one. Okay?
You must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place apply.
So, with that, I will tell you, when we had the trainer come, I asked her, what's the biggest thing, what do I need to anticipate, the biggest gripe from the kids going from Apex to Edgenuity? And she said their inability to jump right to the quiz. So I've asked the kids, throughout the day, what do you think of Edgenuity? They said, oh, I like it so much better because of those interactive videos and things. They're actually learning something, so rather than just trying to get through. So, any questions?
No, it seems like it's light years ahead of what Apex was. Apex was really kind of like having just a textbook in front of you
Right.
to try to just drudge through it.
And the really good thing is this is affordable. It's even cheaper than Apex. It's $15,000 a year. So we're excited about that.
We're like, good job.
All right.
Do we have an ability, Mr. Spring, that we're gonna be assessing the effectiveness of this program? I mean, outside of just that they're passing the material, I think one of my concerns has always been, regardless of the program, is that, the instruction is different, and what are they really retaining and what are they taking away? And so how are we measuring what they're moving forward with? Do we have a way to do that through this or in some other capacity?
I think that we can, when we look at their final grade, I'm an honest guy. A lot of times with Apex, those kids were happy to get 61%, because that's a D, When I've been looking at some of these grades, like the young lady I showed you, she was getting in the 90s, and that's, to get an A in an online class is pretty difficult, So I think if we can look at that and see how, how kids are doing that way. We still have those kids that need prodded a lot to try to get it done, and one thing that, one concern I do have with Edgenuity is, some kids through Apex could get things done maybe even a little quicker just because they were jumping to the quizzes and things, where Edgenuity, I think, is going to be more rigorous, and, so I don't know that we're going to see as many credits earned, as maybe, I don't want to use it as quickly, but the kids are going to have to buckle down with Edgenuity, so we do like that rigor piece there, so.
And how many kids do you have? It's like 35 in Edgenuity right now, is that correct?
For after-school tutoring, yes. For credit recovery, we have 35 GHS kids, and then for that North, I have about 40 of my kids are taking, so. And there's two different types of classes. You can take a credit recovery class or a class called initial credit.
Right.
So we have some kids who might, I don't have a teacher right now teaching, I'm fully staffed, I have lots of teachers, but I don't have anybody teaching consumer ed, and I have a senior who new to us, who hasn't taken consumer ed, so they're taking the initial credit consumer ed course, so, yeah. So.
And these students after school that are coming, are they on credit recovery as well?
So we have 30, I think it's 32 I counted, kids, GHS students who are coming after school, because we have the homework hub and after school tutoring, we're hosting at North, so, correct, yes.
When do you plan on using this program, implementing it?
Right away.
Oh, you're doing it right away?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Are we locked into a long-term contract with Edgenuity, or?
3 years, yeah.
And we've already committed to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda, we will have a presentation from,
Okay, I'm gonna give just a little bit of a preamble here. So We have a representative from Leggett Architects and also Russell Construction here tonight. And just to give everybody a little bit of a history, a lot of people here know it very well. But we have, since 2011, obviously undertaken a lot of different facility projects. And out of all of those products, we've built the field house, we've done the football stadium, the Lombard renovation, the steel renovation, the entrance to GHS, the brand new Silas Willard, and other smaller projects, but those are the big noticeable ones. And those projects have been very costly, as those projects would be. And so we know that we have a reduced amount of revenue to be able to try to undertake all of the other projects that we are trying to get done. So last year, as people know, we spent a lot of time talking to people in the community about what they wanted their schools to look like. We changed the board agenda to reflect those priorities. Then we went out this fall after we engaged with Leggett and had different meetings in the community to try to zero in on some specific facility needs. We've had a very accelerated timeline to try to achieve the goal of having them here tonight to give us some options. And just so everybody in the audience is clear, this is a presentation tonight of options. There will not be any final decisions made tonight. But we are hoping to try to narrow down our options so that we can get to some pretty hard numbers of what we're trying to do. Right now, we're still kind of up in the balcony trying to look down on the dance floor to figure out what needs to happen, but we're getting a little bit lower. So after tonight, then hopefully we get feedback for perhaps getting down to 2 plans maybe. But that's obviously depends on where the conversation goes. But I don't need to spend any more time talking, so I'll turn it over to Jeff here, Jeff Summer from Leggett Architects.
Thanks. I'm Jeff Sandler from the bowling office. So a different culture tonight. We're going to be open, we're going to be loose, we're going to have dialogue. So I just want to make sure everybody understands we haven't been in front of the board presenting a lot of options. We've done a ton of options behind the scenes. And tonight we're just going to present the 5 options that we have. So as John said, we're really high in the airplane right now. We're not focused on walls, doors, we're not focused on a lot of different details of architecture right now. We're talking about conceptually, can this work? How does it work? What are options for the board's consideration? So obviously, I partnered with Steve from Russell Construction to make sure our numbers were valid. He's been using numbers from the last 2 years of projects to make sure our numbers are tangible, to make sure that we're presenting something that's viable to the district. So as John said, there's always history. Everything has history, and sometimes we don't pave our own path, but we just got to deal with the decisions that were made before, good, bad, and different. So we, as our design team, just took those decisions, and we didn't worry about what was the past. We were just looking forward. We wanted to understand what made Galesburg important and what we can do in the future to meet those needs. So you hired an architect in 2015 to basically get your 10-year life safety survey. That's every 10 years, the school district is required to do this fund. So that was great. There was a lot of good information there. He identified a lot of different items. Then he was hired, and he had a lot of different thoughts about options, similar to what we had. Good thoughts, collaborative thoughts. It was great, but he had a shared vision of right-sizing the district, finding efficiencies, because money is not endless right now. Illinois is in a budget crunch, and you've got to use your dollars wisely, and you've got to attract good clientele to work in schools, 21st century, all that good stuff. So you want to try to improve your facilities accordingly. Then Dr. McCaw had this great 13 community engagements. It was very positive. There's a shared vision. Everybody's got to unite. We got to understand not just facilities, but how curriculum, how instruction, class size. It hit a lot of different areas. And the one thing that came out of it, we want to empower our children of choice. We want to make sure they have decisions. They're prepared for the real world. And that's important. So whatever we had, the options we came in up with, we always tried to refer back to this statement, because that was important. It's 13 community engagements, a lot went into those, a lot of effort went into those. So with that said, our first task was to understand sort of the enrollment and how facilities are utilized. Now, I kept these small so people can't say, I use that room, I use that room, I use that room. That's not the point right now. The point is we understand as schools that every single room gets utilized in some fashion. Even if it's just a pull-out for a one-on-one with a student, we understand that every room is utilized. So we try to make sure when we're doing this, we're looking at it very pragmatically. We're trying to see anything in orange and red is pretty much used a lot of the time. But when you start getting to the green and the blues, then you're sort of less utilized, and there's opportunity for efficiencies there. So this isn't meant to analyze at a microscopic level right now. It's just an understanding of, are the buildings being utilized to their fullest? And a lot of them are, some of them aren't. So then we took that and we did an enrollment. We took your current enrollment, and this is the class size for next year based on the new teacher contract. And we understand there's a 2 to 3% decline in population of students. That's unfortunate, but it's reality. It's a 10-year trend, so it's not a blip on the radar. It's a reality, unfortunately, that I think the district needs to realize. And through our facility assessment, we realized that 13 kindergarten through 5th grade classroom, basically the green areas, don't have students regularly in them. So there's opportunities for efficiencies there that the district could possibly consider. Also, the efficiencies used of the space with multiple grade levels at multiple locations cause inefficiency. Obviously, it's a pretty simple concept. The more facility you have, the more your resources are spread out. So that's not to say, teachers or, operationally we'll talk about some of the efficiencies, custodial, administration, and so forth. So when you combine facilities, you get efficiencies naturally. And then just equity of classes. There's some facilities that have 17 students in a classroom, some have 24. So you'd like to try to combine them so you balance class sizes across the district no matter which school you're in. And just understanding that declining enrollment and inefficient spaces, there's 26 of them that we've calculated for all schools. So that's underutilized space that you've got the light on, you got the heat on, you're still doing stuff to, provide the room, general facilities, but it's not really needed. So one of the main challenges of this project is understanding the funding sources. So funding sources are critical for this project because the health, life, safety dollars are not dollars that can be used for anything you want. They're specific items that basically say, I have asbestos, I need to take that out, and I need to put new floor in. So those are specific items. So that's what that 10-year health, life, safety itemized. You can't just say, I've got extra money, so I'm going to buy air conditioning and so forth. You have to use it for the intended item on the specific list. There's approved you're going to see later, which have already been approved in the 10-year life safety, and then there's pending. So Mr. Phillips did a great job with his 10-year life safety. We took the next step by hiring a mechanical engineer who walked all the facilities, who then provided a report of potential items we can add to further improve upon that. So this mechanical engineer is above and beyond. We're considering right now submitting amendments to get potential more health, life, safety funding. So that's what those items are called pending then. And then we need to understand that it's a critical part of this project is being able to, if we choose to vacate facilities, how can we reallocate the funds associated with those facilities? And you guys used that practice for Silas when you did that project. So you took some of the health, life, safety fund and then you added dollars onto that to create that project. So Jen and I have both had verbal conversations with ISB and the state. They said it's very viable at this point, but we know the state, we want to go down and sit down with them and understand and tell them exactly what we're going to do and make sure exactly that the funding source is viable. So that's an important part. So those three things, we've got to understand our limitations on the funding. So that's why I put the little box in the bottom corner. That box, that's specific. Everything we call other funds is where the district is going to find other funds through different sources, and Jen can elaborate on those if we need it. But there's also realization of potential funds for operational efficiencies if the board chooses to vacate facilities. So that's a lot about funding source. I'm gonna hit you with a lot of information. I'm gonna try to get through as quickly as I can. So, in general, the health life safety funding right now approved through your 2015 health life safety survey, you have about $28.9 million. Pending, we're asking for about another 11 million, which will take us to just under $40 million. The operational budget, this is estimated for each school, so you can start to see, I'm not gonna read them all, but $8.5 million. So you can see, if you close down or vacate a school, you would realize those potential operational funds. So obviously that's gas, electric, custodial, food service, transportation administration. So in general, there's potential opportunities there for the board to consider. So there were numerous options, and I printed this out because I know this is microscopic, and I hope you guys can read it. But this is important to understand. So we have 5 options. Option 1 is what we call status quo. That's basically do everything on the pending and approved 10-year life safety and don't do anything else beyond that. So you can see that's the 28.9 in the upper corner with the 11. So a total of 39.9, just under $40 million. That's status quo. So that's not air conditioning at the high school. That's not air conditioning at their schools. That's status quo. Okay? So option 1 for consideration. Keeping all schools open. Option 2, we start to introduce other funding sources. That's potentially 16.4 is what we're estimating it right now. And we're starting to consider vacating some different facilities. And when we talked about vacating buildings, it wasn't this side or that side. It wasn't anything political. It was just trying to make sure we keep schools in quadrants of the city. I mean, it wasn't like, I don't like this school, or I don't like that. There was nothing personal. It was just purely looking at legitimately trying to get quadrants of activity. So right now, in this option, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but this is what we call the neighborhood school option. So we kept 3 K-5 schools trying to get 14 sections. We did get 14 sections. So we'd have an addition at Steele, we'd have an addition at Nielsen, and then we keep Willard. We don't touch anything on Willard. And then we would take Churchill, combine that with Lombard, and do an addition and have 1 middle school, 6-8 center. And then we keep 9 through 12 at the high school, similar to what it is today. But we'd also have this $12.7 million. And that, in theory, is to use for your 21st century, your collaborative areas, air conditioning, all the other miscellaneous, because life safety will only allow you to replace the heating system. It won't allow you to do air conditioning. So by piggybacking it with the heating system, you get efficiencies because you can exchange those units and just pay the premium. So make them from heating only units, you can make them heating and cooling units, and you can just pay the difference. So that's an important thing to discuss. Option 2 is vacating 3 schools, 4 schools, and then K-5, 6-8, 9 through 12. Option 3, same total dollar amount, $56 million approximately. In this option is more of an attendance center option. So pre-K admin would stay here. You create a kindergarten center at Nielsen with some miscellaneous renovations and secure entrance. And then you'd have a 1st and 2nd grade Steele with an addition and renovation, a 3rd through 4th at Silas, 5th through 6th at Lombard. And then this is an important concept we're going to talk about here is the 7th through 12th center at the addition. So one thing, when everybody says 7th through 12th center, they're using it in Macomb, and everybody is scared that the 2 populations are going to mix because they're completely different. A 7th grader and a 12th grader is completely different. So we understand the challenges with that, and we've got to understand that we need to create separate entrances, we need to split them apart, we need to keep that differences between, but we need to share the efficiencies with staffing and resources. So when a student comes in with a counselor at 7th grade, that counselor stays with that person until 12th grade. Just a simple example like that. So you're trying to create the 7th through 12th center to gain efficiencies and to push educational curriculum.
ask the question this time?
Sure.
What does dormant mean for Rose Home and Welch?
Dormant is what you have right now. So the building is closed, but you're not vacating because you're not sure what you're gonna do with it.
So we'd still invest $2 million in that building.
If you choose to, yes, or you can vacate it.
It's 6 classrooms.
I understand.
It's an option.
It's an option. So if you choose to vacate that, we could try to move the funds somewhere else. And you see that, that's why we're giving you a potpourri of options right now. So option 3, more of the attendance center. So option 4, we tried to create, 4 and 5 became hybrids. So 4 and 5, we're trying to get what everybody likes about the neighborhood schools, and then integrate some of the attendance centers. So right now, the pre-K is staying here, but we create 3 K4 centers. So Nielsen, Willard, and Steele will become K4, additions and renovations at Nielsen and Steele, at Willard. 5th, 6th would become Lombard, and then 7 through 12, same concept that we had. Now, one of the options for concepts is, we were talking with administration, we're like, how many times does the auditorium get used a year? Is there potential for that function to go somewhere else to gain efficiency in the community? The same with vocational. Do we want to spend a lot of money on renovating the vocational area? Or is there another building or facility in the area that potentially could be used for that? So potential, just considering, there's nothing set in stone, just options right now to take those 2 out, move them to other facilities around the district. And then you would gain those spaces for efficiencies. Maybe the auditorium becomes the new commons. That's what one of these options are talking about. So once we choose an option, we can sort of push to the next level, next couple options. Option 5, this became the early childhood center. So we created pre-K, K, early childhood center at Lincoln. And then, excuse me, and then you would have a 1st through 4th grade at King, Steele, and Willard. And then you would have, excuse me, Lombard would be 5, 6, and then 7 through 12 with vocational ed off-site, and the district office would move over in this situation. So I bombed you with a ton of information there. I apologize, I'm trying to figure out a good way to get it. But we're looking for the board's guidance on to maybe discussing your streamlining it down to 2, so Jen and I can drill down more into the financing, go meet with the state, and so now I open it up for questions and answers.
Can I revisit the Rose Home and Welch?
Sure.
Why did that stay dormant in that proposal at all?
It was just an option. We tried to make sure that we just threw out a lot of different ideas. So Rose Hoban could potentially use for another function.
We only need to spend money on it if the function is for students, correct?
Correct. So that building's been, it's my understanding, that building's been dormant for some time now. Any other questions?
What other questions? No questions? Okay, Paul?
No, but I've already asked. Someone else probably has some thoughts as well. Especially if we want us to get this down to 2 this evening, we need to.
I don't know that we're getting anything done with you this evening. I think we really need to hash out the conversation so that we can, I mean, by October 1, we can be talking about what's down the tube, possibly.
Okay, let me ask a question.
Okay.
On options 3, 4, and 5, we have a 7-12 center on the campus where Galesburg High School currently is. Okay. 2 of them calls for an auditorium and vocational ed off-site, but they all come in at the same dollar amount. How is that possible?
Because you're putting more improvements into the high school rather than spending the money on the vocational. Like, for example, the vocational would become the 7th, 8th, 9th center. So you'd renovate, you blow all the walls, that becomes 7, 8, and 9. So you're spending your money there, but you're not spending your money to renovate the vocational once and then build a 7, 8 on top of it. Does that make sense? So you're renovating the area to create 7, 8, 9, and you're moving vocational off-site, and that facility would be ready to go.
So in option 3, you still have an auditorium is maintained there?
Currently, yes.
Under that plan, option 3?
Yes.
We're maintaining that auditorium that's used
Yes.
4 times a year? More than that? 10 times a year, sorry. And then, and it also maintains the existing vocational wing.
Yes. You would renovate spaces inside, but you have to get, there's different trades and everything, give and takes. So those are the weeds that we need to get into in the next one.
Would that include renovating the auditorium?
Minimal. That would be life safety, some minimal improvements to the.
So it basically looked the same as it does now?
Maybe chairs.
Good for chairs. Yeah. 2,300 chairs? Miami Dolphins.
What other thoughts or questions from the board table?
Well, my first thought is option 1. I can't see spending $39 million and having our schools look exactly the same with no improvements for education or anything of that nature. So personally, I would take option 1 off the table to begin with.
How does the rest of the board feel about taking number 1 off the table completely?
It's a fine example of good money after bad.
Yep, I agree. Well, now we've limited it to 4.
We're on the way. Personally, and this is just my aside, in option 3, to get the 14 sections, you need to do a 4-section addition at Silas Willard. That probably might not sit too well, but that's what we need to get the attendance centers to work. Ooh, thank you. You're great.
And the other thing with the attendance centers, you've got parents that could have, kids in elementary school, they'd be in 3 different buildings.
Yeah, so if you have a kindergartner, a
And,
second grader,
you
a
know,
4th grader.
And plus, I think there's a lot of advantage to having more grades in the building. I mean, they learn from, like when I taught, the 5th graders came down and read to the 1st graders. You use that interaction between the age groups as well. So I could take option 3 off just for those reasons, but.
In addition, and when Silas was built, it was really built as an elementary to house kindergarten, 1st grade. The kindergarten classrooms are, wouldn't you say, Tiffany, they are?
The size is still substantial. They do
The
have
size,
restrooms.
but
They
they've
still have
got,
restrooms in them.
they've got the bathrooms in them and everything, so I'm not wild about spending money in a brand new building when we might have other options.
How does anyone else feel about option 3 as the attendance centers?
I don't like $2 million on a dormant building.
That doesn't have to be part of the option. It's physically there right now,
We
but
could
that's
switch it
also.
from dormant to vacant
Correct, we could do that.
right away.
Member Statham, you look like you have thoughts.
No, and we had
Please.
some discussions when we had our private meetings. I like a lot of the concepts in option 3. But I'd like to see, and I'd have to go back through, because these are a little bit different options than what we talked about before.
Yes, sir.
I really don't want to see substantial work done at Silas for numerous reasons. But I am weary of this argument against attendance centers. If I have multiple kids, I have to go to multiple schools. You do now. If you got the kids 3 years apart, you're still going to drive your kid at one point to Gale, Churchill, and then to high school. So I grow weary of that attendance center argument against that. The other is I grow weary of parents who say, how am I going to get my kids to all these schools? And I say, well, we offer the busing. Well, I'm not going to bus my kids, I'm driving them. Well, that's your choice. Don't criticize school building and school plans because you're making a choice to do something that we're offering you an alternative for. But, you know, I think the advantages of attendance centers far outweigh any disadvantages. I just, on option 3, and I think we discussed it, to me, if we're going to use Silas as something, I do think it needs to be for the lowest grade possible we can put in there, and I really don't want to tell the public we just built this expensive school and invested all this money, and we're already telling you we made a mistake and we didn't build what we needed. Even though it's a completely different board, I think that makes us look like we were very short-sighted.
We haven't been.
No, I know it's a completely different board, a completely different plan.
We still have people in the community arguing about the dang football field.
Yeah.
I can't make that go away. I can't fix that. It was 7 years ago. It was literally 2 boards ago. I don't know that the previous boards anticipated this kind of conversation when Silas was built. I think whatever decision we make moving forward, we try to make it with longevity in mind, given that unfortunately the perception has been that the boards have been short-sighted in the past.
You know, when we had these meetings, you know, before tonight, I understand a compromise of sort of neighborhood schools for the lower grades, but as we move up, as a student moves up through his academic career, shifting more to attendance centers, which a couple of these alternatives do. I like that. I did express some concerns in our meetings about, I don't mind 7 through 12 on the same campus. I wish it could be in separate buildings. I also wish we had $40 million more. I do have, it's going to take a lot of convincing to me, although I understand it, the whole auditorium concept. I appreciate the ideas.
Right.
I think it's important. It's going to take a lot of convincing me otherwise, but I've been convinced of other things. I think having a large auditorium in one of our buildings is important. I don't know what's going to happen with the Orpheum. I don't know if it's always going to be available. I don't want to constantly be negotiating with whoever's running the Orpheum. I don't want to tell the theater department, well, you're going to have to rearrange what you thought was scheduled because they have an opportunity to bring in this big name act, and it's just a constant negotiation process with them. I mean, I understand if the high school were in its old original location downtown, I think it would be a lot easier. And as far as the vocational center, I know there's space available. Sandburg, it's going to take some convincing to me that would work logistically. I mean, on paper, it sounds like a brilliant idea. I just don't know how logistically to make that work. Again, if they were closer together, I would understand it. But I think in the 4 proposals left, I'm sure some tweaking to one of these would go a long way to, the joke I've had to Dr. Asplin and other board members has been, we did these community forums, and I think through one of these proposals, out of maybe the top 10 suggestions we had, we could probably knock off 9 of them. The only one we can't knock off that a lot of people want is everybody wants a school within 3 blocks of their house. And we're Was Maytag still here, and Butler, and Outboard Marine Corporation, and things like that, you know, maybe we could offer a school within 3 blocks of everybody's house. But with our student population trends and financial trends, we can't do that. And also, I think that people want more in their schools now than 4 walls and a row of desks. And if we're going to give those people all the things they want in these classrooms, and I mean students, parents, teachers, we're going to have to do some renovations, we're going to have to do some consolidating. That's the only way to afford to offer the things people wanted.
Building on what Wayne asked about the auditorium, when you look at options 5 and 6, or 4 and 5, when it talks about renovation of the auditorium, would there not be a venue for any production that seats over 84 people at Galesburg High School then?
It would be more of a performing commons. You could still use that, the stage will still be there. It would just be opened up so you could use it for cafeteria. And the library would become on the upper level. There's some concepts that are being thrown around. It's really, I'm trying to not get in the weeds, but there's some concepts being discussed right now. But the idea is that it would be an auditorium, but it wouldn't be a pure auditorium. It would be a commons that would function as an auditorium.
But if the stage is still there, we're looking for possible seating of 500 then, unmovable seating then, or?
Yes, approximately.
Flat floor.
With a flat floor.
With a flat, so you terrace it, you have a low level, then you come up and then you terrace again, so it'd be up a level, lower level. That's just one of the concepts right now. There's nothing set in stone with that. That's what we were thinking about in our meetings. So it'd still be a performance space.
And remind me again, what is Lombard's auditorium hold right now?
600.
600?
And just to give you a concept, the cafeteria at Stylus can hold about 500 chairs. So I would say a common space of that size could hold well over 500. If you look at the existing footprint of the auditorium. And one of the concerns with Lombard is the parking, and that's part of all of these plans, is to expand the parking at Lombard. That's the only health, life, safety item that is on for Lombard, is creating more parking space, because it's very difficult when you do have a large event at Lombard to have everyone parking there. So that would be addressed, and that would also provide more opportunity. That auditorium is beautiful. It's fully renovated. It would need some probably new rigging and lights and some things of that nature. But
We do own the lots south of Lombard, correct? Isn't that
That's correct.
we do. We have to be careful what we build, because the geofields are under the football field. So that's kind of off limits, but.
But we have the whole lot behind there,
Correct.
across the street.
Absolutely.
Is ours.
Yep.
Whatever street that is.
Other thoughts? Other questions?
Well, while people are thinking of questions, one of the things I wanted to make sure I put out there was we would like to be able to provide a forum for people to provide written feedback. So we would like to be able to put out like a Google form and then put something in other places for people that don't have internet, like at the post office and the public places at each school, for people to be able to write handwritten, input for whatever they want. So what we wanted to do tonight was to find out what input do you want. We can create whatever, we've already talked to Matt, we can do Google Forms, we can do a special email address, we can do whatever. We just want to know what input do you want from people so that they have an avenue to provide that input. We have another board meeting 3 weeks from now, so we could be talking about what that input is.
I think we need to move forward with one that's not require an addition on the Willard building. I think that's, it would be sad to tear up that land after we just closed it off.
That was an option 3 only. Yeah, and, as we went through these iterations,
Option 3 is.
option 3 is the only one that has an addition to style, so we cannot make the attendance center plan work without an addition to style, so that building does not, each essentially every grade level has 300 students, okay, all the way through. I mean, there's obviously variations, but every grade level has roughly 300 students. And Silas Willard doesn't hold 600 students. So, anything that we did, if we wanted to put more than one grade level at Silas Willard, and so if we just put one, it's underutilized, and it's just one grade. And then if we put two, we have to put an addition. So that was, that's where we landed, and that was a problem.
So how do board members feel about then also taking option 3 off?
Well, I think based on what Wayne said, we probably may want to keep the piece on that 712 center, a possibility as presented there with maintaining an auditorium, which I'm not sure I would like to see. I think we should keep that piece as a possibly one of the others. Does that make any?
So.
We don't have to knock out every piece of
So of
option
option 3,
three.
the part that you really are married to, in a sense, is having the auditorium function.
Here's the problem, and I'll let Jeff, you can obviously expand on that. We've kicked that around a lot of different ways. The problem with that is if you go into the concept of a 712 building, we don't have a cafeteria big enough. And so we would then, it blows all the other numbers. We'd have to add on a cafeteria somewhere. I'm not saying we can't, but that's just something that would be a number changer. And so if you just look at option 2, when we keep it as a 912, that's not a problem because it's not as big a population out there. But the ones where we have a 712, there's just no space big enough to have a cafeteria that we can schedule well enough. We would never have the 7th, 8th, and 9th graders with the 10th, 11th, and 12th graders while they're eating. But that just became a problem, just so everybody's aware of that.
Having the 7 to 12 centers, this would allow junior high students to utilize the field house and our other athletic facilities because they're right on
Yes,
property.
and we had a meeting a couple weeks ago or a week ago with Mr. Matthews and the junior high administrators to look at what our athletic schedules would look like if we kept 2 junior high teams but didn't have all the junior high facilities, namely Churchill. We can make it work. There would be some other alterations that would need to be done. We need to add, Eric, correct, is it 2 wood courts or 1 wood court to the field house?
We would look at adding 1, keeping the middle court as is, and then where the tennis court's at, we would take that out and just put a wood court in there.
Yeah. So that's
Because
another.
basketball means a wood court, is that what you're talking about?
Well, because we wouldn't have enough ability to have practice at the same time and do things. There just isn't enough gym space to do it in the logistics of it. And so that was just another issue. And then something we haven't even talked about is, Whitehall Pool. That whole gym space, that floor would need to be ripped up and put down another one because that's not usable gym space right now.
No, it's not.
Because it's, why not?
It's like a skating rink in
The
there. I mean,
floor,
it's
there's no
Did we
trash.
just replace that floor 2 years ago?
No.
That's the
That was the, and
No,
the
Yeah, no.
traction on
That's
that.
not the original Whitehall floor, though. We replaced it.
I
I think it's from 1994.
I call it the original floor.
Okay.
No
Like
traction.
rubber stuff.
You can just slide right on it.
We would
You think you're going
also,
for a layup and now you're on your back.
Right.
we would also be looking at putting portable seating in the field house, so then we could use that as a competition space, not just a practice space. So for instance, like the junior high students could utilize that for different competitions. So,
It would still be interesting seeing that plan.
Well, in some of these plans, we have vacating Gale.
Yes.
And there's a gymnasium in there. Would that be a possibility?
Jeff, we've bandied that about. That's a wonderful point. Jeff, you want to hit that one?
Well,
Or not?
no.
it's been a hot topic.
Yeah, not a good idea.
Okay.
Just, you have to,
Just
funding
throwing
wise,
out ideas to you.
funding wise, you need Gale, the reallocating money from Gale to make some of the other opportunities.
Oh, I understand that.
If
Okay.
if you
Yeah.
give it away, you don't have the funds to use it in another facility.
But we
And-
were
and
gonna
that's
talk to.
$3.6 million, so.
Right, we're gonna talk to the state though about what percentage of that, if we were to preserve just the gym, and then maybe look at getting a smaller boiler to heat that gym. So if you kind of think about how all those pod schools are built, we could in theory, demo everything around it and take that offline, and then just preserve the gym, that would be a really good practice space on that facility.
I was
But
gonna say, but it's nothing more than a practice space.
It-
It
no.
can't be used for, I mean, the ceiling's too low.
Yeah, no, it would only be practice.
it would only
Yeah.
be practice space, but like we could put the batting cages in there and relocate those from the field house is one of the things that, we had talked about. I mean, it does provide another
For the
space.
steel building cheaper.
Yeah.
See, I would, if we're going to a 712 center, I think we need the green space that Gail would, and that empty space would provide to give enough green space for that number of students on the same campus.
It would just be the gym. Everything else would be gone.
Ugly building in the middle of a nice green space.
I would,
That's a question, I guess, I thought about after I left our last meetings, and Maury just brought it up. All these cost estimates, I know how tentative they are, but are you building in demolition costs?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. So you'd be building in, wherever it says vacate,
The cost of demo building is not astronomical. It's more of capping and so forth. Steve, correct me if I'm wrong.
But we can give them, we
whenever
can
I
sell a
run into
building
demo projects,
too,
they're
right?
awful expensive.
you can't make money.
You can't make money.
The district tried that
Would you ask
a
Maury?
few years ago.
Right, we don't have to knock it down, can't we, someone
Well,
else,
you
repurpose it for someone else
you
to
can
use?
sell, yeah, you can sell a building, you can't tear it down and then subdivide the land and, become.
No, I think Maury's just about to
Yeah,
sell.
but just selling the building itself, yes, you can sell the building.
That
Yeah, but if you
didn't-
gave it away, it's cheaper than demo.
But then you have vacant buildings that are owned by other entities in proximity, in some cases, to our schools that did not work well with the technology center that we tried. a
No,
few
I
years ago.
agree, and that's why I was wondering if demolition costs were built in.
One educational advantage to 712, we talked about students that were in 8th grade who were advanced would be able to utilize high school
Absolutely.
courses.
Well, there's a bilateral benefit in that the students who are advanced in what we would consider junior high now would have access to high school classes in certain circumstances. And also those students that are in 9th grade now, and we have a lot of concerns about students staying on track to graduate, staying in more of a middle school model has shown, through research anyway, that those students stay on track to graduate. So you would have, statistically speaking, more students on track to graduate through a 7-12 model than you would just where we are now. In general, the studies will bear that out.
And having a counselor that was assigned at the 7th grade level, giving one person for parents to go to.
Absolutely, yeah, being able to consolidate counseling services, security services, administrative services, health services, we can provide better and more efficient services through a 7-12 model. And my personal feeling is that counselor through 7th through 12th would be great, because they would build that relationship with them and be able to do a lot more personal counseling with them as they would get to know that student over the course of 6 years.
We would also have like our bridgeway workers that would be there, so as those kiddos would have that relationship with those individuals, providing that link to social and mental health services in the community through 7th through 12th grade, so it's a huge need.
What is the major differences again between option 4 and 5?
Kindergarten center.
Kindergarten center. So 5, Lincoln becomes a pre-KK. And then the district office would move to
Gotcha, okay.
high school. That's the major. Other than that, they're pretty darn simple.
I know, I was looking, I guess.
I like the idea of having administration at the high school. It puts them right there where the students are at, and I think that's a huge plus. For the pre-KK, is that renovation include adding bathrooms into the kindergarten?
Yes, but minimal. We got to strategically do that.
Okay. 'Cause I know that's an issue with the kids.
To turn this building back into a pre-KK center would be pretty easy to do.
Other thoughts from the board? I know that we are taking our time with this and that we're like still legitimately in our discussion phase of our board meeting, but I think that it is important for the public to know all of the things that we're thinking and questioning. So I'm okay taking a little bit longer, even though there's a few sports fans that are perturbed by the timing of this meeting.
Bears.
Bears plan.
I thought you come out the Cardinal there.
We have a,
They still playing?
I don't know if they want updates. They can like wink at you if they do.
No.
No. Member Statham says no updates, please. Okay. Any other, so what I'm hearing, if I'm hearing correctly, we're okay getting rid of option 1. We're mostly on the side of getting rid of option 3. And we're somewhere in between option 2, 4, 5.
I would say that if I had to pick just from these,
Yes.
2, 4, and 5 would be my leading choices.
Okay.
I would agree.
As would I.
So then 2 is the one where we keep a 9 through 12 high school, right?
Yes.
So then, if I may beg the question, what's the advantage between option 2 over options 4 and 5 that have a 7 through 12 grade center?
I think I would like to get a lot of community input before I switch the high school from 9-12 to 7-12.
Okay.
I think we need to look at that as not just the high school, but as the entire campus. I can't disagree that people need to weigh in on it, but we really can't say we're just putting 7th graders at Galesburg High School. We'd be putting 7th graders at a brand-new facility with either new rooms or totally remodeled rooms, because that's what we would end up with, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I think that's a very
And how
different piece.
logistically we work the separation and keep the populations.
Right, because my dream that I've been talking all along, I talk about with Jen, is I wanted to turn that into a campus, but I wanted a separate building for 7-8. In my dream world, it would sit where Gail sits. And it would be a new, modern junior high with, modern labs and things like that in it. But people like Jen and Dr. Aspen promised me, hey, I can get all that. It just won't have that space that I want.
Wasn't inside your head to know the picture. I do think it is important for everybody to remember, though, that, we are dealing with it's a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but it is limited, a limited budget. So, we do have a lot of outstanding debt, and so we have to live within this box of funds that we have available, and so it would be inappropriate for us to go beyond that any farther. So we feel like this is pushing the envelope as far as we can push it, and trying to be responsible to everybody, students, taxpayers, homeowners, business owners, any prospective homeowners, anybody moving into town. We're trying to do what we can that's best for everybody, knowing we can't give everybody exactly what they want.
Okay, so from maybe a show of vigorous head nodding from the gallery.
Oh, from the gallery.
Yes. If the board were to solicit feedback regarding options 2, 4, and 5, would having an online form such as Google available and possibly pushed out through Sky Alert in some capacity, and then having paper options located in the schools sound like a viable option? And then I would probably say somewhere like the public library.
Yeah.
I'm seeing some head nodding. That's wonderful.
Is it also possible, I know we didn't have a huge turnout for our community groups as well, for people who can come and ask questions at some time during this intervening 3 weeks? Because just the right feedback, they may be able to have a question that can get answered if they had the person in front of them who could answer it.
Well, I think if we directed them over here to speak to either Jennifer or myself, I think that would be it wouldn't be fair to the principals who aren't, doing this all the time.
No, I was wondering if we should try to do.
I'm right, but I'm just saying, if people are going to the buildings, it's just to provide feedback and to see the plans on paper. That would not be the play. They don't want them walking into Lombard and asking Nick Young, hey, now walk me through this, where's the boiler going? But.
The boiler room, wouldn't it?
If, that's a good place for it. That's where I vote. But no, I think if we made people aware that they could come by the district office at certain times, I wouldn't just, we would want to be here. But if we had designated times where people could come in and ask questions of us, yeah, sure. I think that's a good plan.
And we have some of these plants like blown up large.
Well, they can stand next to them then, put it up there. Yeah. And these plans here are, we're not going to have, this is where the chemistry lab's going, and this, it's just conceptual, kind of understanding of what the space would be. But yeah, I would perfectly be willing to open up this office for people to come in and ask questions during certain times. Yeah.
And I think it would be remiss of me if I didn't ask the gallery to share this with people, because in some sense, time is of the essence. Every day that we're not making a decision and moving forward, there is the possibility that the costs that we're looking at are increasing. And I see Jeff nodding his head.
The money guy says 3 to 5% inflation per year.
3 to 5% inflation per what?
Per year.
Per year. And we want to make sure, one of our jobs as board members is to be fiscally responsible with your money. So for us to try to do this as thoroughly yet as expeditiously as possible so that we are making sure that we're using your money efficiently and effectively to meet the ends of our educational goals, I think is what we're trying to shoot for. So,
Has
sure.
timeline been set on any of this? Okay, that's what I know I'm not supposed to ask questions, but I don't care. I just wondered if the timeline of this was.
Can I just put a structure to this discussion a little bit, as I think it does? This total budget to do all these things is $56 million. Just want to make sure that would not cover the cost of a new high school. That's served. A high school that serves 1,500 students. Could we build that for $56 million?
The challenge you get is using the health life safety funds because you've got to prove to the state.
Can you build a high school for $56 million for that many students?
The last high school we did was about 70.
70 million? And how many students were that?
Similar to your district.
What's that?
Similar to your district.
$70 million for a new high school?
70.
Okay. So we're getting a lot for our money here then.
That was a Chicago suburb, so different areas, but that was the last, yes.
I have a question on option 2.
Okay.
On option 2, we keep the high school as it is, so once we've done whatever we're going to do under this option to the high school, would it look any different when you walk in?
Yes, that's what the $12.7 million
Okay, and so in
other funds.
what way does it look, how does it look different?
So that would be the commons approach. We'd start to.
Okay, so you're still talking about the commons approach in that one?
Correct. So there'd be, we talked about an addition that goes into the courtyard a little bit and
Okay.
creates a commons. You have to do the kitchen, renovate a lot of the classrooms, air conditioning. So there's some higher level items that are in there. We haven't drilled down to like change that receptacle yet, but just bigger concepts.
Okay.
But in 2 through 5, the existing Galesburg High School classrooms will be all renovated, correct? Or not?
They will be touched in some manner. Some rooms might be carpet, ceiling, paint. Other rooms might be blow out some walls, make a collaborative area. So that stuff we need to decide when it becomes a real project, once a direction's given. Then we get into the nuts and bolts of what that actually becomes. Did that answer your question, Lori?
I'm still worried that the discussion we had last month that we're in a 60-year-old building with some classes that have been touched except with the same ugly colored paint in 60 years. I want to make sure moving forward that we have rooms for both our staff and students that won't look like 1959.
Conceptually, yes.
I was in school in 59, it didn't look like, you know.
Conceptually, yes. The intent is to cover every room with some sort of improvement. Now, will something come up during the design process and we find something else that can't happen? Maybe, but we won't know until we get into the weeds.
Do the board members feel like they have thoroughly exhausted their questions, their suggestions, their concerns?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Since you offered one last rob. We've sat up here and talked about before, I'm talking about elementary levels. We talked about boundary studies, we've talked about the inequalities that might exist between buildings and, this building, this building, this building. And I've gotten a lot of feedback about attendance centers and how awful they would be. And I've gotten some, that would be great. So I guess my question is, because the options we're leaning towards do not include attendance centers for the most part, how do we address, or how would it be addressed to keep, I think, 3 K-4 buildings?
Depending on, elementary.
Okay,
is something,
sorry.
Depending on
Whichever
version.
way it goes, but how does the inequality and the things that exist now, even if you have 2 less buildings, how do those try to be equal buildings, whatever they end up being?
Well, once we knew, if we're looking at options 2, 4, and 5, we could get some pretty specific information about what that boundary would look like in fairly quickly. We could show, okay, this is what we think the boundaries would be, more or less, for 3 K-5s. Because we would have to make sure that those fit, and we have the ability to do that fairly quickly. So we could do that work over the course of a day at some point to really kind of get down to the boundary study and say, and there's part of me that I know that's a touchstone, hot point issue for some folks. I don't want that to get in the way of people making a decision, because they're going to have to change if we eliminate buildings.
Right.
And so, I think it would be important to, as we looked at it, let's look at it simply. This isn't scientific. But if you had 3, and I'm looking at number 2, so that's why I'm using it. We're looking at Steele, Silas Willard, and Nielsen. And they're always Steele and Silas Willard in something. So Steele, Silas Willard, and Nielsen. You could basically cut the town in thirds from west to east and just look at it that way and say, okay, that's this first, the west third goes to Steele, the middle third goes to Silas Willard, and the east third goes to Nielsen. And really look at it that way, because north to south, would you say 3.4 miles? Is that what the largest distance is from one school to another?
From here, yes.
Yeah. So if you live in Lake Bracken, obviously, if you, if we made that the Silas Willard School, okay, that would be a drive. So we might have to do some thoughtfulness about that and maybe make that Steele, or King, if that's the one that maybe there already is King. But we'd have to look at things like that, just because we want to be thoughtful for those folks that are driving a long distance. The Henderson folks, they're probably going to look and go to Silas Willard. That just makes sense. But we'd have to then rearrange some other neighborhoods from people that might think they're in the Silas Willard building right now. For instance, if we moved Gale folks or whatever into there, or Nielsen folks or whatever, then that would separate those out in a different way. So we'd have to look at that pretty quickly.
And so I'll get back on my soapbox. As educators in this district, you should be disappointed when people say, I don't want my kid to go to that school. And you should be the biggest cheerleaders for your educational buildings. And when we hear community members say, I bought my house in that neighborhood for that school, we should be the first ones to be saying, you know what? My kid can get an excellent education and great support at any one of the schools in our district. And if we are not going to be the biggest cheerleaders for our schools, And we are gonna have ownership over the buildings that we're teaching in, rather than trying to make sure that we are providing the best education for every student in every school building in this school district, then we need to do some inner reflection. And I'll step back off my soapbox again.
Okay, so we still need to get to what type of feedback do you want, so we can put together what it is you're looking for, so that,
Google Forms,
all right?
forms in schools, and then public areas,
But
library.
What
Oh,
do you
what
want?
do you want?
What do you want in them? I mean, it's just a blank slate. I'm not sure that's a good idea. I would ask for specific questions.
That I was not prepared to give to you.
I think questions about how students will be divided and treated in our 712 center, 712 campus is a reasonable question. I think if we have one that has a pre-KK center, there's be questions about the benefits or losses associated with such. Those two come to mind.
But if we're asking for people to provide us input, what is it, the input we
What
are
are we gonna
looking
ask the
for? We
community
say,
to give
hey,
us?
Sue, we want you to give us input. What input do we want? I pick option 2 because it's, it keeps the school near my house open. I mean, people can write that. Is that helpful?
No.
All right, so that's my point.
Well, what do we need to know to make our decision?
There you go.
We are full of thought up here.
I mean, we can put things like, what educational purpose do you think is best served by this option? What educational purpose is best served by this option? I mean, you can get that. You can say, which option do you prefer and why, but please make it focused on educational decisions only, or, financially, or, I mean, I guess, I want to give you the information you need to make the decision that you want to make. So how do we best do that?
I like the last thing you said, the last part of it.
Maybe we could have some multiple choice items, but then allow for a comment box, like it shows, I like this option for these reasons, and then a small comment area that they could expand on that.
Right. I guess we want people's input, but at the same time, we don't want, hearing what you've said before, we don't want people to go, yeah, where's option 1? I want that one back because that's the one I want. I mean, we know there's going to be people that want that, but we've already said that's not an option, so why waste people's time?
I'd like to hear concerns that I haven't thought of myself.
Sure.
Because I'm looking at this.
What
thinking-
concerns do you have with option 2? What concerns do you have with option 4?
I'm thinking about how my kids are still in school at the different
I
ages, how.
understand.
And,
Yes, we will renumber them.
For the 4th time.
Yeah. What is it?
It's okay.
I think it's more than
The
that.
bottom line is, though, that we're going to spend $56 million no matter what.
Well, that's going to be, yes.
Right?
And so that's going to be a very
What do you
important
wanna
thing
get
for
$56 million?
Jen is working with our bond folks to make sure we've got all that laddered out. We show you what that would do with the tax rate, where that other money's coming from. We're trying to get all that information to you as fast as possible, with the best information possible. So that would be something we'd like to get for you in October. But yeah, it's looking like whether we do it in 3 years or we do it over time or whatever, yeah. I mean, in order to get fully renovated facilities, as I think it was Maureen that asked, if we're gonna have a high school that was built in 1959, it's still gonna look like that. In order, if we just did the health, life, safety work, yes, it's gonna look the same. So yeah, we're gonna have to invest more money.
And I think people need to realize that health, life, safety money is not someone else's money. It's still our money. There's not a pool coming from Springfield, or in this case, a real wide hose with money in it. It's our money that we're allowed to spend and raise differently.
Correct. Well, and even more importantly than that, we have to. So, I mean, it's not really optional for us to go, you know what, we're just not gonna do any of it, we wanna save money. That, the clock's ticking, we're on year 4 of 10. And so we've gotta do something with these very soon. So we're gonna put out something asking for people's concerns and highlights of good things they like for each option, which option they prefer and why. And leave that open as a text box there, and then,
And you'll have times people come here to ask questions.
And we will, we'll come up with some, we'll work on that tomorrow. We'll try to do it a few different times for people that work different hours and try to be respectful of that.
No one may show up, but they have the option.
Right, yep. And we'll put them in the buildings, and we'll put them at the post office, the library.
Can you put things in the post office?
We can, I think so. I'm gonna ask them anyway. If they tell me no, I guess the answer is no. The library, I think we'll put them at the big night housing subdivision there, and the Iowa Court, and then what's the third?
It's on Berry
Corn-
Street. Between
On
Berry
Berry,
and-
yes, that one as well.
They have names.
Cornucopia, we can put
Cornucopia.
there. Uncle Billy's Bakery.
You know that.
I know. Looking for a good buyer. Trying to help you. Yeah, the windows aren't being used, they're just playing.
Okay,
Public
we
spaces.
digress. So, if after we leave this area, and another question or thought comes to mind, board members, please email Dr. Asplund with some, no, not better ideas, just with some speed, some urgency, so that we can get this survey out.
Yeah, I would like to get it out, this week, so, I mean, we're gonna get it out to people so they can. And I guess the other thing for people who are listening, we're not anticipating the closing of schools, meaning we're getting rid of teachers. We have the same number of students, so this is not a reduction in staff initiative. This is just, so if anybody out there is thinking that's not part of this, okay? This is just reorienting where the people work. We should
board
have
already
roughly
did
the
that.
same number of people.
We already did that once, I'm not gonna do it
Yeah,
again.
just to be clear, yeah, this is not for that.
Okay. Any other final thoughts?
I just want to make sure, there's some people in the community who may not have seen what some of our renovated buildings look like.
Yes.
And I would welcome them to go by Steele or Lombard to see what can happen with an older building that's been renovated. Because you're saying, because we can hopefully do at least as well at Galesburg High School and whatever campus ends up there, we've done these other two renovated buildings. And there's probably plenty of people who have not seen them, and I would welcome them making a visit to either of them.
With respect to the school day. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Okay, moving on to the approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Any questions or any items members want removed from the consent agenda? Going once, going twice.
I have a few questions about the accounts payable that I asked a few times earlier in the year. Can I just ask you a
Like
question?
in general questions?
You gave me an answer on CenturyLink,
Mhm.
but it's $5,000 a month.
I know, it's very expensive to have a landline. So we have to have all of those. We have multiple lines that are coming into the building for our alarm systems.
None of that can go over any other system?
No,
No.
it cannot.
That's $60,000 a year.
Yes.
And we have problems with the fact that now that fewer people are using landlines, the maintenance of those landlines is not being done as it was at one time. And so we have a lot of error codes that come up because the phone lines are not working properly. But there's nothing we can do to have that go over an internet system or anything else. It has to be a landline.
They can't go through a cell system.
No.
Is that what the defense industry does too for security? They go through landlines and stuff? I'm really serious on this
I don't
question.
know, but that is the law. That is absolutely the law.
Oh, it seems like good money wasted.
One of these building plans is approved, we'll save money on that.
There you go. It's true.
Right? Okay, I have no, thank you
There's
for.
a correction to the minutes on
Okay.
August 13th. At the very end, it says that I called for adjournment. and I wasn't there.
Okay, I'll change it.
So I don't know who it was.
You're loud, we heard you.
But I thought, I don't remember calling in, but I might have called in. But I thought, well, I guess we probably should change that, but, so, anyway.
I'll change it. I'll look and see who it was and I'll change it. Sometimes I get
I just couldn't say, I couldn't sit here and approve it knowing that it said that, so.
I can't remember it was Amy.
Thank you for that amendment. Any other comments, questions? Okay, Allison.
Pickrell.
Aye.
Sherby.
Aye.
Statham.
Aye.
Banks.
Aye.
Cervantes.
Aye.
Glastovich. Lyon.
Yes.
Moving on. Next item, focus area 1, relevant skills that lead to employability. First on the agenda is the administrative report on curriculum.
So you should have in your packets the watchdogs. You should have the watchdogs piece. It was just a snapshot about what the program is related to. We piloted this last year at Silas Willard and had actually a lead dad kind of help guide this. This is where we talked a little bit about having over 400 parents, 400 dads and students come on a couple of occasions. We also had upwards of 25 dads give a full day of service in the classroom, in the lunchroom, supervision and such. But this just gives you some ideas about what the program is related to. And the elementary schools across the district are looking into doing this at each of the buildings. And some have already reached out. So we're just looking at some key dads in those buildings to help lead that. Did you want me to go into some other pieces, or?
Do we have any questions about that? That does not replace street stats.
No, it does
shape or
not.
form. It's just the elementary.
Right.
Anybody have any questions about Watchdog?
That's like a good program.
Okay. Currently, we are looking into our Amplify, that pilot that we received for just a little less than $12,000. That was free. Materials came in this week. I'll be distributing those to the kindergarten through 5th grade teachers that are doing the pilot. And we are going to have their training on the 17th of October, which is the half day. They're going to do it in the morning since that day is already shortened. So we'll get the least amount of instruction interrupted. So they'll be able to get going on that pilot.
Schools.
All the schools. I've got one represented at every building, yes. Actually, Mary Warnsing, she's going to do the 2nd grade for us. But yes, we do have one represented at every building. The Sept teams are meeting. They're starting their first meetings of the year, working on their school improvement process. This week, I'm going to be getting invitations out to the District Improvement Committee to be meeting in October. We'll then have 3 meetings following that. But I look forward to that starting up. Think Circa's on its way. We're working with ECRA data that we use. I'm going through various buildings and sitting down with principals to go through the ECRA data and the usability of that system to make sure we're using it to its fullest capability. Matt Jacobson is going to go tomorrow to see the ECRA dashboard, which actually allows teachers, without digging through reports, to just have the data right in front of them, which is what we're looking to move towards. I'll be at the bilingual conference Thursday and Friday, and then next week I'll be at Title I. So, got a busy couple weeks ahead. That's all I have.
Any questions from board members? Okay.
I'll take it.
Next on the agenda is the special education report. Dr. Mashad is actually not feeling well, so Dr. Asplin is going to attempt to take this part.
I'm glad you used attempt. Yeah, Dr. Mashad is quite ill, so I asked her to go home. So she is a little infectious. So you have in your packet the behavioral intervention guidelines. She and her team have been working together to try to put out and revise, and that's there for your review. And if you have any questions, I would ask you to direct those to Dr. Mashad via email. You can include me or not, but she will be happy to answer your questions. I'm not just speaking for her, she did put that in email to me. So, but yeah, so if you have any questions about that, we will be looking to approve that next month.
Oh, so it's next month.
Correct. Yeah. So this is just first review, and then if you have any questions, just let us know.
Sorry.
I do encourage board members to take a look at that, and I started to look at it last night and realized it was 32 pages long.
They've done a lot of work.
Yes, very much so. But I also don't like to read on a computer screen, so I was like, I need to print it so I can mark it up and questions, so. Do whatever you need to do and come with questions, please, next month, or actually send those ahead of time if possible.
Yeah, preferably ahead of time, so if there's anybody that wants to make revisions or anything, we could get those ready for next month. So that next month is only 3 weeks away, so have a quick turn.
Okay. Building reports. Any questions on the building reports?
I have a request.
Yes.
There be a way that all of the principals use this form that we got? It would be very helpful if they all use the same form. They all give us the information we want, but it's in different places, and the year-ending thing that we did on the attendance and.
Is that what I gave you
stuff.
today,
That you
Vicki?
gave me, did you just give it to me, because I asked?
No,
for it?
we all have it.
Okay.
Everyone has it.
Okay, yeah.
That's just a spreadsheet.
Well,
so we can
but
figure
if,
out.
I mean, I just think it's real easy to see what we're trying to capture, and they all do it. I mean, I think it would make it easier for them maybe too, but,
The only issue would be you wouldn't see specifically any, it just doesn't tell you what anything was, or anything like that. It just tells you who.
well, yeah, I just want this for the number portion of it, or something, just something that's the same, I guess, so I don't have to figure out where I have to look at each one.
I have an extra.
And if that's makes their life, if that makes things difficult, then don't worry about it. I'm not trying to make things any harder,
That's just pulled from Skyward, that information.
We've tried to standardize it as much as we can. Obviously, elementaries are a little different than middle schools, are a little different than high school.
This information probably
I do appreciate that there was an attempt made in the building reports to standardize the information.
Do you want us just to do that report monthly?
Well, I would love that.
And then
let them do what
can
they're
the buildings
doing.
then
Yeah,
talk
because
about
I
the more
don't,
specific
I don't dislike
information?
their building reports. I'm not saying
But
that.
yeah,
That would be
we'll just
great.
pull this report every month.
Okay, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
I will also mention, this is a positive feedback, room for growth. I appreciate all of the statements that the schools are putting into, like, part of their goal setting is paying attention to the rubric, the diversity rubric, and paying attention to diversity statements. I guess my next step for you is to articulate in some capacity how you're measuring that. Like, what does it mean, right, to be an inclusive school? What does it mean, right? And if it's coming from that rubric, that's great, but ways in which you know as buildings that you're actually measuring it. I noticed that one of the building reports, and I'm not sure which one, I believe it was elementary, was talking about the fact that they're bringing materials in, they've already been ordered, right? Some of that stuff is helpful for me to know. And then the ways in which the buildings are helping to provide professional development along those lines, because it's a lot more than just feel good, everybody's important, it's actually acknowledging the differences in learning, yeah.
So to add to that, part of the school improvement plan goals, in each goal, there's diversity, inclusivity, and equity tasks that they're going to create, so that you'll get to see those.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and like I said, they're just beginning, but yeah, that's a part of it. I agree.
Thank you, appreciate it. Man, we've come so far in my 4 years on this building. I love it. Almost makes me feel like I don't have anything left to do.
There's always something to do.
I'm looking around for that. Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions or things about the building reports? All right.
Can I just apologize? I see you all mentioned open houses, and I attended the one open house I was invited to. I guess I would have liked to have known when they were, and I would have attended others, but I guess I could have looked at calendars. I kept expecting something. I think we talked about sending out a calendar at one point.
The new calendar that Tiffany put up there has, where you can go and see all that.
Mrs. Springer.
Sorry.
Where?
If you go to the main webpage,
It's-
there's
yeah.
year at a glance, and they're all there too. I don't know.
But you don't have to look up each school calendar up there.
They're all posted on the district Google Calendar that pushes to all the school sites and the district site. So when Allison put those all into the district calendar, they appear on everyone's on the front page of everyone's website.
And your comment is valid too.
Yeah.
There's a theater event
Yeah,
on there too.
yeah. Which is what I don't like, I like the whole district.
Agreed.
I appreciate that information. I will just mention that as someone who no longer has a student in the school district, sometimes my first instinct is not to go to the district website. Then it's just a thought. I try to, but I don't always do. But I'm looking and I like it. Okay. Anything else? All right. Focus area 2, facilities assist in skill acquisition, an update on building projects. Mrs. Ham.
Well, we're finishing kind of up our few fall, late summer, early fall building projects. The new playground at Steele is complete, and I've had reports from Mrs. Graves that we have families out there enjoying the playground. She said when she left, I think on Friday, that there were 3 families out there when she left playing on the playground. So that's really exciting. The fencing is still an ongoing issue. It is not there. There have been back orders on the materials, and we're kind of struggling with getting a timeline of when that will be installed. And then there was a question about where we were at with the landscaping for Steele and for Silas. And I provided copies of the quotes for everyone on the board. Buildings and Grounds has met regarding this, and we have some follow-up that I actually need to do in terms of getting some different pricing and kind of scaling back the plan that we received from Greenview. So we'll be working on that. The goal is to at least have some trees planted this fall. This is a good time to do it. So we would love to get that done at Silas and some trees at Steele before winter hits. So
Back to dormant again, right?
that's right.
That's right. On the fencing at Steele,
Yes.
those trees that we were talking along the roadway, the north-south roadway,
Yes. Yes.
which side of the fence were we talking about putting those?
I would say they would have to be on our side of the fence.
Well, then,
I don't think there'll be enough room between,
I don't think there would either, and I'm just thinking about this fencing project on the gates. I assume, I don't remember looking, there must be some large service gates.
there are, do you know where the maintenance shed is?
Uh-huh.
There'll be some large
Okay.
service gates there.
I just didn't remember looking for that when I
Yeah.
looked at it the first time. I assume we thought of it.
Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you. Next, the enrollment report. Dr. Asplund.
Thank you. You have that attached to your agenda. Oh. In addition, we did some enrollment trend data. So you have not only the first day, 6th day, and September enrollment, we also have some trend data for you we thought was timely for the building discussion tonight. In 1980-81, when you were still experiencing the end of the baby boomer population, we had 6,623 students in the district. We had 22 buildings that we were operating. And a mere 10 years later, we'd already dropped down to 53 because that baby boom generation had graduated, which was a 19.2% reduction over the 10 years. And then we've experienced a 7.9%, a 10.7%, and a 6.5% reduction over the subsequent years to where we are now. 2,500 students below what we were in 1980-81. So somewhat of a precipitous drop from the 80s to the 90s, and then it's been a gradual decline from there. So the total percentage loss since 1980-81 is 44.2% of the population.
Any questions about the enrollment data?
I believe also, if memory serves me correctly, and some of you can help remind me, I believe Gale Products closed right around 82. I think it's 82. And so that would have been the beginning of the outflight of a lot of the manufacturing jobs, which of course Butler and Maytag waited until 20 years later. But
Do we have an idea yet? No. Have we seen already any movement between schools? We're in, what, close to a month? Have we already started?
Are we talking mobility or overflow?
Mobility.
I don't track mobility necessarily, but I can get that information for you.
Okay.
I mean, someone does, I just don't.
I was having a conversation with Ms. Jennings today, and we had at least a handful from her building alone that have moved within the last few weeks.
Okay. I'm sorry. I think the reason, well, it's not I think, the reason I asked that question openly and publicly, not to put anyone on the spot, is because it also demonstrates one of the challenges that we have in this district with our current school structure is that we do have a high mobility population, and they're moving in and out of school within the district, so they're staying in district, but they're moving in and out of schools throughout the school year. And I don't know that the general population of Galesburg understands or knows that. And that's why it's been so important the last few years in the work that is continuing today to make sure that the curriculum is aligned so clearly between building and to grade level, because that ensures equity of education that Member Pickrell was alluding to earlier. So then we have less opportunities for people to say, I want my kid at that school, because that opportunity is going to be better than at a different school. There's a purpose to the questions that I ask. Okay. Anything else about enrollment?
no.
All right. Moving on to focus area 3, responding to the changing needs of our community. Consider approval of the special education speech guidelines. Do I have?
I so move.
Second.
There were no recommended changes from last month when we presented it for first reading.
So there are no questions. Allison?
Sherpy?
Aye.
Statham?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glasnovich?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell?
Aye.
Okay. Consider approval of budget for District 205 and GABC. Do we have to do this in 4 parts, right? We can't do it as one motion.
You can do the resolution for the 205 budget and then a resolution for the GABC budget.
So, first point of order, do we have a motion for the resolution for the District 205 budget?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? Allison?
Statham?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glasnovich? Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell?
Aye.
Sherpy?
Aye.
Okay. Do I have a motion for the resolution for the GABC budget?
So moved.
Second.
Questions? Allison?
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glasnovich? Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell?
Aye.
Sherpy?
Aye.
Statham?
Next, consider approval of the amended 2018-2019 district calendar. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions?
Yeah, I do. Why are there 2 days for finals at the end of every semester term when students only take 4 classes?
Why are there 2 days?
Uh-huh.
Because the high school said they needed 2 days.
We're always told that every day's so important, and it's bad when kids miss days, and we're giving away 2 days out of every 45 days.
Trying not to burden students with 4 finals in a single day.
Yeah.
But are many students taking 4 finals in a single day?
Yes,
It just seems like a large block of time
it is.
out of a short term, right? It's just, it comes up every time, so many times, 4 times a year, duh.
8
And
days. 8 days a year.
8 days a year.
And then it's the day before the finals, and then it's the day, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's a lot more than just those two. It's time consuming.
Seems like.
But as a matter of contract, that's the reason we have these on here now, is because at the end of every term, we agreed that we would have an hour early release the last 2 days of each quarter. So that is why those are on here now.
I think it's something to look at as we.
I would love to have a comprehensive review of our finals, because there aren't a lot of colleges that give finals. We give finals just because we give finals. I mean, we don't, we need to have a comprehensive understanding of why we're giving finals in the class that we give finals. So I would welcome that study.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Allison?
Cervantes.
Aye.
Glasnovich. Aye. Lyon.
Yes.
Pickrell.
Aye.
Sherpy.
Aye.
Statham.
Aye.
Banks.
Aye.
Consider approval of press policies. This is the second reading. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or about this?
I have a few. And the policies where there are blanks still, those blanks are, I thought maybe they'd be filled in at this point when we're approving them. But there's grade levels and other places, and there's still blanks in those policies.
You mean for 610?
Yeah, I know, that's 610, 630 for example. So we're asking to approve, find it.
Yeah, the school district has instructional levels for grades blank through blank.
Well, okay, but we didn't change it on there, but on the memo that I sent to you, that did have the grades included in there.
Okay,
So I said recommend to be approved with grades
Okay.
pre-K.
I just thought the ones we'd be
Yes.
approving today would be, okay. Can I ask a few more questions on the policy? 660 talks about today was Constitution Day, and that all the schools would be celebrating it. Do we share that with our classes, that they know that they had an expectation by policy?
Do we share it with classes? I bet
Do they
we don't.
know, do the schools know they were supposed to have an activity today? I'm not putting anyone on the spot, because I bet you don't.
I'm looking, so I'm thinking that's no.
Because our policy says that on September 17th, we're going to celebrate Constitution Day. And I really hate having policies, we had this conversation earlier, that we're not following.
Well, I'll be the first to tell you that I was hoping by now, and hope is not a strategy I appreciate, I was hoping by now to have that, to have a calendar out that had exactly all those things on it. I'm through section 4.
Okay.
And if we didn't have a building study going on, I think I would have been done. But in a contract negotiation, I started a really long time ago. My time has gotten taken away from me. So it's my fault, but yes.
Blaming anyone.
No, I'm blaming me. But I'm
Policies.
telling you, I'm through section 4 with all that, because I remember
And that's
Rod
at
saying
6.
this last year, that this is something we need to have done. So we didn't get it through this year, so Constitution Day went unheralded. I apologize.
But we just mentioned it now.
I'm sure Eric will talk. I mean, look at him right there. He's going to talk about it tomorrow in German.
It's too late.
Well, Constitution Week. It's Constitution Week, everyone. Constitution Week.
Do you have more questions?
Your turn, I'll come
Okay,
back.
this was on 660. I have another question on 660. At the top,
It's
it
a big
says, "The curriculum shall contain instruction on subjects required by the state statutes or regulations as follows." And on number 2, it said in grades 9 through 12, subjects include language arts, writing intensive course, science, mathematics, social studies, including U.S. history, American government, and for students entering the 9th grade in the fall of 2016 and each year thereafter, 1 semester of civics, foreign language, music, art, driver's ed, and vocational education. So do we now, that sounds to me like based upon the first line, that a semester of foreign language is required. And a semester of music is required, unless I'm just not understanding what is here. Because it says, shall contain instruction on the subjects required by the state statute as follows. And if you look at the last part of number 2, it says in the fall of 2016, 1 semester of civics. See, in the past, the requirement has been, I think, 2 credits in the following, and language and vocational and music and art were all listed within that grouping, but there was never a specific requirement for music, for art, for driver's ed and safety education. There, I guess there was for that, or vocational education. So, I'm just trying to see if, and of course I left in 2011, so certainly it would have been put in, but. Or maybe I'm just not understanding.
No, I just want to make sure I'm reading it the same way you are.
So it says it shall contain instruction on subjects?
Required by state statute or regulation as follows. That's the
Right, so
first-
we're required to offer them, but I'm not reading that as they're required to take them.
Because see, that's what I'm not sure of. That's the reason
Yeah,
I'm
there
asking
we
the
go.
question.
Yeah,
Is that the
you have to
difference?
offer, curriculum shall contain instruction on subjects required by state statute or regulation.
Okay.
We have those, and the
Yes.
ones that are required by state, as we've been audited by the ROE, I know we've passed.
But see, the ones included are also courses of
Right.
U.S. history, which are required. So since they were all lumped in together, that was my confusion. It's confusing, the wording.
It is confusing, but I think I'm reading it just that we have to
Yeah.
We have
provide
to
the
offer.
opportunity.
That was my thought
That's
initially.
Yeah.
Okay.
Somehow I missed being concerned about it, so I must have run it the same way as Tiana, to be
That's
honest.
fine.
Any other questions? Member Lyon? Curriculum or instruction?
I guess since John and his staff is working on these things, we have the 6:130 on gifted students. I know
Actually, Tiffany can talk about that.
because we don't really need that currently, or do we?
No, we do.
What's the plan?
We are working on that. That is a committee that is going to be created here within the next couple weeks, actually, to develop this based on our consensus as a group and what gifted and accelerated should look like in Galesburg 205.
And accelerated is the next policy, 135.
By law, we
It's
have
both
to
of
have
those,
those.
yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right. And, okay, thank you.
Mhm.
We agree, we are short that, and we need to have it, so we are getting it.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, are we,
I have nothing else on the press policies.
okay, so it was also recommended that we not approve one,
Mhm.
so.
School uniforms.
Yeah, the school uniforms policy, right.
You sure?
I'm sure.
I like
So do we have to, because we're approving press policies, do we have to say, consider approval of press?
As presented.
As
And when they were
presented.
presented, we didn't include that policy.
Okay. All right. So if there's no further questions,
We have a motion and a
Allison.
second.
Glasnovich?
Yes.
Lyon?
Definitely.
Pickrell?
Aye.
Sharpie?
Aye.
Statham? Banks? Cervantes?
Aye. Okay. Consider approval of policies to amend the complaint manager. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions?
Water's not cold enough.
It's an unworthy complaint. We weed it out.
I approve of the new complaint manager. There's no questions, Allison.
Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell?
Aye.
Sharpie?
Aye.
Statham?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glasnovich?
Aye.
Discussion regarding the high school bridgeway position. I believe this
Yes,
has.
not action, it's just discussion.
Yes, this is discussion, and this, it looks like it has your name on it, Mrs. Springer.
Sorry, maybe that was you, Jen.
Jen?
I was like.
It was really Jen.
Okay.
I can come up with something. I got it.
after a conversation that Dr. Asplund had with Mindy Ritchie at the high school regarding some items that we would like to see the counselors shift their focus to, the conversation came up that unfortunately they are dealing with so many mental health issues on a daily basis that it prevents them from doing what they were really trained to do, which is providing academic guidance to students. So one of the things that we want to explore, and we're hoping to bring something back to you next month, is the idea of potentially putting a bachelor's level Bridgeway worker at the high school, which would have a background in social work or psychology. It would be a little bit different position than we're looking for at Churchill and currently have at Lombard, in that it would be more of a triage situation. I'm actually, if you have specific questions, I'm going to turn it over to Mindy Ritchie because she understands the model and mental health counseling and kind of what this would look like on her end and kind of what they need. So I'm actually going to turn over to you, Mindy.
Okay, so Bridgeway provides services
Mindy,
through both.
you come up and use the mic.
Absolutely. So I worked at Bridgeway for 10 years in a variety of roles throughout the organization. They provide case management services both at the bachelor's level, most typically, and also therapy for licensed individuals or those that hold a master's degree, and then also receive clinical supervision from someone that is clinically licensed. So the idea for this position, where it's a little different than Sarah Bates at Lombard or the other positions that are being hired, rather than have the student receive therapy services throughout the high school day, they would be linked up to Bridgeway and have that direct kind of conduit to the crisis services available there, the nursing services for those students that meet those criteria and have those needs. For a lot of our students, some of the needs that they have are more just kind of acute type things that come up. Maybe something comes through on Snapchat where someone else is unkind to them, maybe like a breakup or a disagreement in a class with a teacher, sometimes a panic attack that just kind of requires someone to spend time with them, calm them down, and get them back in the classroom environment. Frankly, at Galesburg High School, if you look at our numbers versus how many are being served at Lombard, ideally, I would love to have a bachelor's level person and a master's level person. The master's level individuals are very hard to hire in our community. They're having a hard time finding that person, any of those positions at Bridgeway. And that's kind of partly why the bachelor's level position became a little bit more important to us. In addition, like I said, providing therapy in the school environment can be time consuming when a lot of times those linkages are needed, very much so. And we want to bring the parent into the conversation as much as possible. And at that bachelor's level, that communication piece is really key. What questions do you have?
Why is it necessary to partner with an outside agency for this services? Is there not a reason, couldn't we not do this in-house without paying someone else's administrative costs?
The reason that is so important is because of that clinical supervision piece. When a student is presenting as suicidal or something of that nature, you can call for SAS services if they are not insured. So in order to provide that and be able to get the students in for the care that they need, a lot of times what our counselors are doing is putting a Band-Aid on it because
No, but that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm saying, why can't we just hire this position as a District 205 position instead of reaching out to another agency and having to, like I said, pay their
You
administrative costs?
technically could, although they would be isolated. They wouldn't have the linkage in terms of all of the different pieces coming together with the nursing. And that's certainly viable, other than the position, as explained to me, the model with Sarah Bates at Lombard has been successful. It is not a position that has to be hired in that manner.
We're not
we hire
looking at the type of
nurses.
position as Lombard is, right? It's a different That is a master's level position, right?
She's a master's level non-licensed individual, working on licensure.
See, I would hope, we recognize that there are mental health needs that are going unmet in our community, in the larger community as well as within our schools.
Certainly.
At some point, I would hope that the school could meet those with personnel that we find and could link with the larger community services who still have responsibility to serve those. It just isn't, I don't know, it seems that if we have the supervision better if they were our people.
We will, that there's laws within the state of Illinois that actually prevent in some capacity for us to do that. So if we were to hire our own employee and they be a licensed social worker or a licensed clinical psychologist, they would also have to have gone through educational certification type 73.
Licensure.
That's for school.
Yes.
Which are, yes, our counselors.
That's
do
my
that.
school counselor.
Right. There's a shortage of those.
But I'm not talking about a school counselor, I'm talking about.
Right, but if we say we're gonna hire that in our district, we might, like, they're a District 205 employee, that we might actually have to go that route rather than just say we wanna hire someone like that.
What you're saying is that they would have to have the school certification.
If we wanted our employee.
Licensure, and they're in short supply.
Right, rather than going
Just like
through
special
Bridgeway.
ed.
Right.
Just like all the special ed services.
And the ASCA model for school counselors has mental health components. They do receive some training. It's just not nearly as extensive for dealing, I mean, you know all about this, member Glasnovich. It's not nearly as extensive as some of the things that they're dealing with on a daily basis. And certainly, some of our school counselors have more of an interest in mental health and an interest in it and extended studies than others do. But we're not utilizing our counselors for academic achievement really much at all.
And the other thing that Mindy had shared and how this all came about was the counselors on a relatively frequent basis are receiving communications on nights and weekends where students are making threats of self-harm. And so it's at that point then our counselors are working on Saturdays and Sundays to contact parents, to try to find those resources where there are on-call elements to the Bridgeway services that then they could automatically be linked with, correct?
Right. Right. But the biggest, what I think, hindrance to the idea of us hiring a licensed mental health professional is trying to find one in this community. Bridgeway has 4 positions open just like this that they're not able to fill right now. They can't fill them. So even if a position was approved, say we, even looking for someone like Sarah that is master's level that is seeking the credentialing, they're very hard to come by.
Any other questions?
No, I agree it's a problem that needs to be addressed. I mean, as much as anybody here, I have had for years kids on my front porch on Saturday and Sunday and things like that. My only concern about the idea, and I don't mean to say the wrong thing, and I think Maury's kind of thinking the same thing, I'm not sure how much a bachelor's level person can assist in some of the things that you're talking about them doing.
We discussed that.
Well, and it's somewhat of a, what's the pool of applicants to think if we could get somebody, we agree, that's probably, in a perfect world, we would have a raft of master's level folks. We're looking at this position as really being more of somebody who's kind of a direction over to Bridgeway to get them, or whatever services, for one, because they're more, whether or not more trained, but they're training for that, and then our academic guidance counselors can spend time doing academic counseling.
But also, and I understand that, I'm just kind of playing a little devil's advocate here. I'm not positive that just because Bridgeway can't fill 4 positions, that we couldn't fill the position. I mean, those are 2 different, entirely different entities with different expectations, and it doesn't necessarily mean that somebody would take a job here and not take one in Bridgeway.
That's true.
Well, the question on here, though, it says it's to serve as a mental health counselor for the purpose of making referrals to Bridgeway.
Yeah.
One person is not going to be able to do all the counseling that these academic counselors are trying to do now.
And
So
it would
one
be-
person
right.
wouldn't be enough for us to handle all the counseling anyway.
It would be outside the scope for them to do
Right.
actual counseling.
Right.
It would be quick intervention and linkage.
It would be more like what the outreach workers used to do. They'd identify it
And
and
I
they'd make
didn't
a
want to use
referral
that
to
term,
Bridgeway.
but you're correct. There's
Well,
some
that's what
similar,
it's,
yes.
that's what it's doing, right?
Yes, so
But-
someone needs a medical card.
But let's be realistic, quick linkage to Bridgeway doesn't mean they're gonna get the kind of service they're getting now. Those students are not gonna get the kind of counseling services, and I agree. You can't, the counsel, I say you, because I still think of you as counselor.
Sure, I understand.
We need to focus them more back to academic counseling, but I think this idea isn't gonna get those kids the same quality that they're getting now.
Sure, and frankly, when Jen and I first spoke about it, it was more of a comprehensive plan whereby the bachelor's level person could work with, like a Sarah, and have a comprehensive plan for the district so that all of the schools are served and not only Lombard students. However, I quickly learned when I met with them at Bridgeway that Sarah is entirely full. That idea is not feasible. So that's where we came to our latest discussions in terms of what we could do.
Good ideas.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay. If you have additional questions or suggestions for how to move that idea forward or information that you would like, please forward it to Dr. Aspen, please. Okay. Moving on to the next agenda item, consider approval of job descriptions. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Oh.
Second.
Any questions or discussion?
Are we looking to do this year with the job descriptions?
No, we would, their formal employment would be next year. What we'd be looking at is, and it's something we presented on before, we need to present it again, instructional coaches, is that it would be an attempt, as part of one of our other district goals, is to move our district budget over to what the EBM is funding us for. And so we would be taking from our existing pool of folks in the district, but we'd like to start posting for these pretty soon so that we can get them the training they need between now and next year. So that if we have other positions that are open up, then we need to look at, either moving people around or filling those positions. But we're really not looking at extra positions, it's really repurposing positions, more than that, so yeah. But we wouldn't plan to, they wouldn't start that job until next school year.
Any other questions? Okay, Allison?
Pickrell? Sherby?
Aye.
Statham?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glastovich? Lyon?
Yes.
Okay. Consider approval of the personnel report. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Second.
Any questions? Allison?
Sherby?
Aye.
Statham?
Aye.
Banks? Cervantes?
Aye.
Glastovich?
Aye.
Lyon? Pickrell?
Aye.
Now we come to everyone's favorite moment of the meeting, comments by us. Member Lasevich.
I'm ready for fall weather. One of my first, when I was in my counseling program in college, my professor was the head of the department. One of the first things that I remember, maybe the only thing I remember from his introductory speech, was what is most important to people is what is most personal. And I've kind of used that as I've gone through my career. Each person who would come into me with a problem and be upset about something, I would try to remember that even though this doesn't seem like a big deal to me, it's a big deal to them. The example he gave, a 5-year-old that can't jump rope and every other 5-year-old can jump rope, that's a big deal to that 5-year-old. To us as adults, we would say, it's no big deal, you'll be able to jump rope someday and everything, but at that particular moment, what's important to that 5-year-old is what's most personal to them at the time. So as we think about this building study and we think about making changes, I think we just all need to remember not to take it personally, but to realize the way some people are taking it is so important to them because it is so personal to them. And if we can keep that in mind as we move forward and then try to gather everyone's ideas in the best we can and try to remember, although for individual people there are going to be upheavals and so forth, but that we as a board, we have to consider all the students and try to get the most equitable education and use these facilities in the best way and be attentive to the taxpayers and all of that. And that has to be our main goal. But just to remember that to some people it's very personal.
Well said. No further comments.
Member Pickrell.
I address it a little differently than Member Lyon, but I wanted to thank the high school and Steele for inviting the board to the open houses this year. I was not able to attend the high school, but I emailed my comments about Steele's open house to Mrs. Graves, and can't be more excited that my kid goes to that school, so thank you. And I also wanted to add that we don't really talk about our committee meetings anymore, but Member Glasnovich and I did meet with Mrs. Springer about curriculum, so we did get something off. Got to listen to a lot of the ideas coming forward and things, but I just wanted to let the board know that.
Right, because our committee structure has been restructured into the thing.
Yeah.
But that's a nice reminder for people to know. It's not that our committees don't exist, it's
Right.
they're just restructured into the agenda. Okay. Member Banks.
No further comments.
Member Seaton.
No comments.
Member Lyon.
I was going to say no, but I can't. Just that I hope people take advantage of this comment period on these plans. I mean, yes, they may look at things differently, but this is our opportunity to make a mark on what our community has. We see the decline in student population. I think with nice buildings everywhere, it'll be a magnet that instead of losing 2%, maybe we'll gain 2%. I mean, there's no reason why that can't happen. And yes, we may close schools, and we may need at some point, so we build a nice addition on that matches the rest of the building. But I just hope people take the opportunity to give us their input now rather than pissing on us later.
I appreciate it. I don't have anything to add. I think I said a lot of what I needed to say during the meeting. I think that summary is that we should just want to be proud of all of the schools in our district and proud to teach at them, proud to attend them, proud to be a part of them in whatever capacity we find ourselves doing so. For whatever, all the complaints that people can have, I hear a lot of times, my kids who had a good education through District 205. And I think we need to remember that and try and figure out how we can capitalize on that moving forward. So, any future agenda items?
I think it's a full plate.
Yes, we do. Okay, so our next meeting is set for Tuesday, October 9th, due to the holiday.
The final Columbus Day.
Yes, are we going to, okay, yes. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I can stay.
It is no fair that member Pickrell gets to preside over the short meeting and member